For the last week, my comment section, even my email inbox have been filled with the same question. Have you seen what's happening between Reckless Ben and Bricks and Minifigs? Well, I was kind of busy in Iowa last week, but the answer is yes. Yes, I have. A YouTuber shows up in Utah to collect money connected to a massive Lego dispute. Within days, he's pulled over by police, trespassed from private property, subjected to a vehicle search, arrested for stalking, released from jail, arrested again, and then becomes the target of a search warrant looking for stolen Lego merchandise. And depending on which side you believe, this is either a story about a citizen journalist being harassed by police for exposing wrongdoing, or a story about someone who crossed the line from investigation into criminal harassment. Hey, I'm America's attorney. I've been a lawyer for 25 years. I've helped over 12 million people. After spending the last several days reading the police reports, probable cause affidavits, search warrant applications, and watching Reckless Ben's own footage, one thing becomes very clear. The story being told by Ben and the story being told by American Fork Police are not compatible in the same universe. So, let's jump down into that rabbit hole. To be clear, this video here is not about whether the Lego collection was actually stolen. Legal Eagle breaks that argument down. Go check his video out if you want to know more about it. We're going to break down the police encounters themselves, what officers say was happening behind the scenes, and why a civil dispute somehow turned into 2 stalking arrests and a criminal investigation. Before we get into it, do me a favor and hit subscribe. I built this channel where I spend my days reading police reports, court filings, and search warrants so you don't have to. I work for you for free, and it's somehow perfectly legal. Hit the button, stay forever. Now, for those of you who haven't spent the last week watching YouTube videos about Lego stores, which is probably a sign that you have a healthier hobby than the rest of us, here's the 30-second version. YouTuber Reckless Ben got involved after a family reached out to him for help, claiming that a Bricks and Minifigs franchise had wrongfully taken possession of a massive Star Wars Lego collection that Ben repeatedly describes as being worth around $200,000. Ben made a series of videos about the dispute, eventually helped pursue litigation connected to the matter, and claims he obtained a judgment in Oregon. But according to Ben, collecting on that judgment proved actually harder than winning it. He says the store closed, the Legos were never returned, and that led him to start pursuing the people that he believed were personally responsible. And that's where things went completely off the rails. Well, actually, they were never on the rails. The first police encounter happens before Ben ever gets his good faith conversation. According to the video, Ben and his group drive into Joshua Johnson's neighborhood, planning to talk to him in person. But almost immediately, something catches their attention. Multiple police cars show up near Johnson's home before Ben ever approaches the property. Ben becomes convinced that somebody's tipped police off that he was in the area and that officers were already waiting for him. A short time later, police pull over the vehicle Ben is riding in. The officer tells them the reason for the stop is a stop sign violation. Ben disputes that immediately. In fact, one of the central claims in his video is that he later obtained the footage and he believes that it shows a complete stop rather than a rolling stop. Now, whether the stop sign violation actually occurred is almost beside the point. What makes the encounter interesting is what happens next. The officer quickly identifies Ben and starts asking questions about why he's in Utah. At that point, this doesn't feel like a routine traffic stop anymore. Everyone involved clearly knows this isn't really about a stop sign. The officers know who Ben is. Well, Ben knows who he is. The officers know who they are. Ben knows the officers know that they know who he is. And I know who I am, and you know who I am, and you know who you are. Anyways, both sides know this has something to do with the ongoing dispute between Bricks and Minifigs. From Ben's perspective, this is the first sign that local law enforcement is treating him differently because he's trying to pressure the people that he believes are responsible for the Lego dispute. But from the police perspective, which we will get into in a moment, officers had already been receiving complaints involving Ben and people working with him for days before this stop ever occurred. And that difference in perspective is going to become the theme of this entire story. After the traffic stop, the situation escalates almost immediately. Remember, Ben's stated goal here is simple: have a conversation with Joshua Johnson so he can satisfy what he believes is this good faith effort to have a meeting before filing another lawsuit. That's how Ben frames everything that follows. The police, however, seem to view the situation very differently. During the encounter, officers tell Ben and the others that they are being trespassed from the property. In the moment, it almost feels like a minor detail. Nobody gets arrested, nobody gets handcuffed, everybody leaves. But once you read the charging documents, you realize this trespass warning becomes a major piece of the larger story. According to the probable cause affidavit filed the next day, police had already been receiving repeated complaints from the homeowner. Officers wrote that people associated with Ben had been showing up at the residence, taking photographs, knocking on doors, attempting contact over multiple days. The affidavit also references earlier incidents involving people allegedly acting on Ben's behalf to make contact with the homeowner. Up to this point, if you're watching Ben's video by itself, it feels like police suddenly appear out of nowhere and start interfering with what he believes is a legitimate attempt to serve papers and pursue a lawsuit. But when you read the probable cause affidavit, you realize the police are describing something much larger. According to investigators, the encounter we've been talking about wasn't day 1. It was closer to like day 4. Police say complaints started on March 8th. The affidavit describes a series of calls involving different people allegedly connected to Ben appearing at or near the residence. One incident involved a suspicious package delivery. Another involved an individual who officers say showed up portraying an LDS church member. Then, according to police, additional people continued arriving at the house over the following days, attempting to make contact with the homeowner. By the time officers encountered Ben on March 10th, they were no longer looking at what they viewed as a routine civil dispute. According to charging documents, they believed they were dealing with a pattern of conduct directed at a single-family residence. The biggest example was the sign. Police alleged that Ben admitted placing, or at minimum directing the placement of, a sign accusing the homeowner of stealing a dying man's savings. According to the affidavit, Ben told officers the sign was intended to get the homeowner to come outside. Ben, of course, presents this very differently in his video. He portrays the sign as part of his effort to pressure the individuals that he believes are responsible for the missing Lego collection and to advance the legal claims. And that's really the heart of this case. Ben sees an investigation. Police see a course of conduct. Ben sees protected speech. Police see stalking. And whether those repeated contacts cross the line from aggressive advocacy into criminal conduct is ultimately the question that drives everything that happens next. If the first stop made Ben suspicious, the next encounter convinced him that police were actively looking for a reason to arrest him, and he was willing to give them reasons. After sending a church member to Johnson's house, Ben and his friend are stopped again. According to Ben's account in the video, officers were acting on information that caused them to suspect drugs might be present. However, I've not found anything in the court documents identifying the source of that information, and I don't hear it in the body cam footage, although most of it is muted. What follows is one of the longest and strangest police encounters in the entire Reckless Ben cinematic universe. The officers begin questioning the occupants, searching the vehicle, and trying to determine whether anyone is under the influence. Ben's friend repeatedly insists that he doesn't use drugs, doesn't drink alcohol, and is willing to take whatever tests the officers want to administer. Eventually, after what Ben says was roughly 2 hours of searching and questioning, officers find nothing. No drugs, no paraphernalia, no Legos, no arrests. Now, Ben's interpretation is straightforward. He believes somebody connected to the underlying dispute made a false report and that officers were eager to run with it because they were already looking for a way to build a case against him. Everything we've talked about up to this point, the traffic stop, the trespass warning, the complaints, and Ben's attempt to contact Johnson, has been building toward this one moment. Because on March 10th, police decide they have enough to make an arrest. In Ben's video, the arrest comes across as a shocking escalation. His position is that he was trying to serve Joshua Johnson with the lawsuit and document that Johnson was refusing to engage. From Ben's perspective, this was part of the legal process. He had a pending civil dispute, he had court papers, and he was trying to get those papers to the person he intended to sue. But when you read the probable cause affidavit, the police are framing that same conduct very differently. The affidavit doesn't treat this as one isolated service attempt. Instead, it lays out what officers describe as a multi-day course of conduct directed at Johnson and his family. Police cite multiple calls for service, repeated attempts to contact Johnson at his residence, prior complaints involving people allegedly associated with Ben, and statements from Johnson that the ongoing contacts were causing fear and emotional distress for his family. Police concluded that these incidents were not isolated events, but part of a continuing course of conduct directed at a specific individual. And that distinction matters. Serving a lawsuit is generally lawful. The question police were asking isn't whether a lawsuit existed. Well, they were, but even after establishing that, what mattered to them was whether the totality of the conduct surrounding those service attempts had crossed the line into criminal stalking under Utah law. Ben's answer is predictably no. He believes he was pursuing legitimate legal claims and documenting his efforts to do so. The police answer is predictably yes. They believed the repeated contacts had become criminal conduct. And once officers reached that conclusion, the encounter ends with Ben in handcuffs and facing a stalking charge. At that point, what started as a dispute over a Lego collection has officially become a criminal case. At this point, most people would probably just post bail, go home, and let their lawyer handle the rest. That is not what happened. Not at all. After the first arrest, we don't like it when you say first because that implies Other individuals associated with Ben returned to the area and displayed a large sign accusing Joshua Johnson of stealing a dying man's life savings. The sign was positioned near Johnson's neighborhood and was clearly intended to draw attention to the ongoing dispute. Importantly, police were not alleging that Ben was physically present at the scene, because he wasn't. Their theory was that he remained involved behind the scenes, even though other individuals were the ones who actually displayed the sign. So why does this matter? Because police didn't view the sign as an isolated protest. According to the second probable cause affidavit, officers believe the sign was another part of the same ongoing course of conduct that had already resulted in the first stalking arrest. The affidavit alleges that Ben remained involved in organizing or directing activities connected to Johnson even after being arrested the day before. And that's where the legal fight starts to shift. The first arrest centered largely on repeated efforts to contact Johnson and serve legal papers. The second case revolves much more around speech, signs, public accusations, online promotion, and efforts to bring public attention to the dispute. Ben's position is that this is classic protected speech. Criticizing someone publicly, even harshly, is usually protected by the First Amendment. Police took a different view. They concluded the sign could not be separated from the larger pattern that they believed was already occurring and used it as additional evidence supporting another stalking charge. But is that a valid application of the stalking statute? Just when you think this story can't get any stranger, the police investigation takes a hard turn back towards the Legos. Because while officers were investigating the stalking allegations, they also sought a search warrant for the Airbnb where Ben and his group were staying. Now, if you've been following the story up to this point, that's a pretty surprising development. Up until now, everything has revolved around alleged harassment, service attempts, signs, and contact with the mysterious Joshua Johnson. Suddenly, police are asking a judge for permission to search for stolen Lego merchandise? Well, according to the search warrant affidavit, officers learned that a group of YouTubers was renting an Airbnb connected to Ben's group. Police then contacted the homeowner, who provided surveillance footage showing Ben entering the basement rental unit. The homeowner also told police that he overheard people inside discussing what he described as stolen Lego toys. These people are like playing telephone.
Officer, right there. Come on in, go.
Based in part on that information or misinformation, investigators requested a warrant to search the Airbnb and Ben's vehicle for stolen Lego merchandise. Now, here's where I start asking questions. The affidavit doesn't identify any witnesses claiming that they saw stolen Legos inside the Airbnb. It doesn't identify any serial numbers. It doesn't identify any specific Lego sets. It doesn't describe any physical evidence connected to the Airbnb to any missing property. Instead, the key allegation appears to be that the homeowner overheard a conversation about stolen Legos and reported it to police. That doesn't automatically mean the warrant was improper. Judges routinely issue warrants based on witness statements, not usually about Legos, but okay. But it does raise an obvious question. Was there actually evidence that stolen Legos were inside the Airbnb? Or was police suspicion being driven by the larger conflict surrounding Ben and the Bricks and Minifigs dispute? And that's where viewers, like you, may come to very different conclusions. If you trust the investigation, the warrant looks like police following up on information from a witness. If you're skeptical of the investigation, the warrant looks like a remarkable escalation based on a very thin factual foundation, even thinner than the walls at the Airbnb, apparently. So after all that, we're left with the question that has divided the internet. Was this police protection for a well-connected business owner? Or was this legitimate law enforcement responding to escalating conduct? If you watch Ben's video, the answer seems obvious. He's a great storyteller. Police show up before he can make contact. He gets stopped in traffic. He gets trespassed. His vehicle gets searched for drugs, and that appears to go nowhere. He's arrested while he's trying to pursue a lawsuit. Then police obtain a search warrant for stolen Legos based largely on an Airbnb owner's muffled statement. Viewed through that lens, it's easy to understand why Ben believes officers were looking for reasons to intervene rather than simply responding to complaints. If you start with the police reports, the picture looks very different. Police weren't describing a single attempt to serve papers. They were documenting what they believed was a multi-day pattern involving repeated visits, multiple complaints, different individuals allegedly acting together, and a family that repeatedly called law enforcement asking for help. From that perspective, the officers weren't protecting anyone. They were responding to a situation that they believed had crossed the line into criminal conduct. And here's the reality. Both sides have facts that they can point to. Ben can point to encounters that seem unusually aggressive and a criminal investigation that kept expanding. Police can point to repeated complaints, multiple documented incidents, and a judge who found probable cause to support that stalking arrest. The disagreement isn't really about Legos anymore. It's about where is the line between aggressive advocacy and criminal harassment. And depending on where you think that line belongs, you'll probably walk away from this story with a very different opinion about what actually happened in American Fork, Utah. But no matter where you come down on this story, one thing's undeniable. This is not how most civil disputes end. Most lawsuits don't lead to traffic stops, stalking arrests, search warrants, and national YouTube drama. I wish they did. But believe it or not, this isn't even the craziest part of the story. Because everything we've talked about today, the traffic stops, the stalking charges, the vehicle search, the search warrant, that's just the criminal side of the fight. The civil war is somehow even bigger. Bricks and Minifigs has now gone on the offensive and filed its own lawsuit against Reckless Ben. And buried in that litigation is a court order that required Ben to take down his videos from all of his channels on May 28th. That was almost 2 weeks ago. That's really, really, really bad. Think about that for a second. A YouTuber makes videos accusing a business of wrongdoing. The dispute explodes across the internet. Police get involved, criminal charges get filed, and now a court is ordering those videos removed while the legal battle continues. But he hasn't done it yet. I'm telling you right now, Ben has probably ruined his life. You cannot disobey court orders. If you don't believe me, ask I'm a lawyer. You should believe me. So in the next video, we're going to break down the lawsuit itself, the claims being made against Ben, the court order that has already been entered, and the question at the center of the entire controversy: where is the line between investigative journalism and defamation? Ben is probably not going to like my answer. Do me a favor, drop your pro se opinion down below and tell me, were the police legitimately responding to a pattern of conduct that concerned them, or did officers allow themselves to become part of a private dispute? I suspect that most of you already have an opinion. And don't forget, while you're down there in the comments, just hammering away on those keys, to lawyer up with me, America's attorney, by hitting the subscribe button. I will be back very soon with my next Ben breakdown, and I will see you then. Had wrongfully taken possession to pressure the individuals that he believes are responsible. Wow, I love it. I've been a lawyer for 25 million years. I almost did it again.